Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the In Transition podcast. I'm excited to be back for season 2. As you know, I've been taking a little hiatus, looking for some fresh new guests, meeting some new women, which is obviously super fun. And I am really excited to be having this conversation today around entrepreneurship. But let's face it, a little bit different slant. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, especially women. As you know, I mostly speak with women. But the fun thing about today's conversation with my guest is going to be talking about how, as entrepreneurs, we often feel like we get stuck in one lane, or when we pick one thing we're going to do as entrepreneurs, we feel like we can't step outside the lane we've picked or pivot even to something else that feels more aligned. So today I've got the amazing Natacha Guyot with me. And we're going to be talking about all things solopreneurship and specifically spiritual entrepreneurship, which some of you may not be super familiar with that term, but you're going to learn about it today. But before we get into that, I want to briefly introduce Natasha. Natasha, as I mentioned, is a spiritual entrepreneur, and she considers herself a soul alchemist, which I love this term. She helps you gain clarity and inspiration in your current professional, personal, or spiritual season with intuitive readings and practices, including tarot and oracle cards, of which I have had a reading from Natasha, so I can speak personally to this experience as we get into this conversation. But she really helps you facilitate your inner dialogue and reconnect with your wisdom, which don't we all want more of that? She's also here to guide and support you as you explore how to embrace your truth and take aligned action. Welcome, Natasha. So happy to be having this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Lauren. And for those listening, this brand new bio is literally out of the oven, the proverbial oven, as of the day we're recording. So it's the first time I'm hearing somebody else introduce me like that. And I'm just like, yes, it's landing.
Yes. Like, this sounds like it's aligned. Yes. And this is a lot of what we're going to talk about today, right? So I want you to first start with, I always like to use this word catalyst. For those of you who know me, I also run a women's community called Catalyst, where we're kind of part social club, part incubator space. And we're always exploring, what is the next thing in our personal or professional growth? And Natasha, this is a fairly recent pivot into spiritual entrepreneurship. What was the catalyst that kind of moved you in that direction?
So that's technically that the first seeds were really planted last summer, right around the time when I was first, launching my own business, which was also kind of a hard time for me because 2 weeks after originally launching my business, I had a miscarriage. And then that was kind of, soul searching and, be like, I'm starting my business. And I was lucky to work with really an amazing coach, and she's considers herself a spiritual business coach. So I was still really hell-bent on content and video, which I did for several months, but there was still that little, I want to do something with tarot. It was already there, that I want to host intuitive workshop, yada, yada, which I've done end of last year. And, it was really back burner. So I was really like, the initial little seeds of, and last October, I was like, you know what? I want to experiment with doing tarot reading professionally. I had done that for over 20 years now, but not in a professional capacity. So I was just like, hey, with Halloween coming up, it's the spooky season. People can also give themselves more permission to explore that, because hey, it's the Halloween season, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had amazing feedback. I had it's starting, way more than I expected. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do that on the side, compared to the rest of, my more traditional video consulting business. And then since the beginning of 2024, I was just like, there was friction because there was friction with too much work, trying to build two business at the same time and not really being that happy, let's be honest, and feeling like something needed to give, and, what I was imposing on myself, a video should be, your big earner. And then everybody flocked to me, new clients, even people I'd barely met for the tarot. And I love doing that. So it was, kind of follow the money, follow your heart, follow your soul, and, following people's feedback, being like, oh, that really helped me, or seeing the haha moments. And then it was kind of like, oh, I could actually just say, do you swear on your podcast? I forgot to ask.
Yes, you're fine.
Yeah, because really, okay, and I thought so, but I was suddenly like, hang on a minute. So it really, truly, that was a fuck it moment.
Mhm.
When I was just like, I can just, if the right person arrive or whatever, I'm still open to do video work, but really I'm just like, I don't want to promote it anymore. I don't want, to spend countless hours on it. Just let me go in my other lane, and go have fun in this new one.
Well, and I love what you're talking about, like this idea of permission, right?
Mhm.
As entrepreneurs in particular, like we're constantly seeking, I feel like, permission outside of ourselves to do the things we might feel called to do, or kind of what I alluded to in the beginning at the top of this podcast, where once we pick a lane, it's like, oh, we got to stick to it, or we have to give it enough time. But I think the beauty in what you're saying is you can always be reevaluating. You can always be checking in with yourself. Am I in alignment with what I'm doing in my business? Is this where I want to be going? What do I feel called to do? So you were listening. And how
I
has
have
it
these
felt?
moments.
Yeah, I'm like, we all do. How has it felt since you took that step and really started to shift your personal brand and how you present yourself in the world and the things you're doing?
Liberating. That's the first thing that comes to mind. It's just been liberating, and really like deciding, going back, to giving myself permission to be like, hey, you're really good at it. You love doing it. You feel like you're making a bigger difference this way. So just go have fun. And I've been having more ideas, and like there's been so many things kind of falling together. So of course it's a pivot, and I think when we do that, even if we originally are like, oh, maybe I can pivot, there's always the, yeah, but what I've done before, and have I wasted my time? Even if we intellectually know there's no time wasted because we're still learning ourselves around the way, I think most of us still have that, hang on, maybe I should stick it out longer or whatever. And when you're just like, I'm just making myself miserable.
Well, and I feel like that is why so many of us get into entrepreneurship, is because we, one, maybe wanted to be our own boss, because that's a whole other thing where maybe we came from corporate and we've lived enough of that world where we're like, I'm going to do this thing on my own. I have strengths and skills. And we look for the thing first, I feel like, that's going to make money, right?
Yep.
What's going to like replace my corporate income? Not so much worried about, does this actually align with where I want to be in life and what I'm really passionate about? And again, I feel like I keep attracting women into my circle that are really change makers at their core and want to make an impact in the world. So I think we butt up against this point in our business sometimes where we're like, I'm not making the kind of impact I want to make. And maybe you're not making the dollars either. So then it becomes like this double whammy of like, am I aligned? Yeah. Is this the place I should be in my business? Talk to me about how that came up for you as you were making the switch into spiritual entrepreneurship.
So yeah, first of all, I'm just like nodding along because I'm like, yeah, this, and the devil whammy, it's kind of like I was saying, like all the, when I started looking, like all the income I had made this year solely came through the tarot side of my business, and nothing through the video, even though I was promoting and everything. And like, even, in like when we're talking about alignment, is like, I felt like I had to belly dance and shake my hip a little to the left, shake my hip a little to the right, to be hoping to maybe, get potential, video clients. And I knew, because I tried it, I beta tested with people. I mean, so I knew that what I had was valid. I'd even rearranged some of my offers based on, audience feedback. But on the other hand, I saw people I barely met on LinkedIn, who even didn't know me, but knew me from a, mutual friend, and just be like, oh, you do tarot. Where is your booking link? Okay.
Huh?
So, and
Like,
from many different walks of life as well. Like really, really interesting. But it was really that moment when I was just like, and I had a few friends and my spouse be like, you're not happy. Like you're just working yourself to the ground, waiting for something to happen, but you're making yourself miserable. And I'm just like, do you really have to say that? I could just keep cruising under the radar, for a while. And I mean, I needed these conversations, but it's also like, yeah, but my background, because my background is in film and media studies as well. So also the video kind of made sense, and I liked it. And I also, looking back, and that might be something you relate to, sometimes we look back and like, oh, there were all the signs, like, so I can think of like 3 to 4 people that I talk to just, casually over like the fall, even being like, okay, you're good at what you do with video, but the moment you start talking about tarot, you light up like a freaking Christmas tree. That's even one of my friends literally said. And I was like,
Yep.
yes, but, the but, that was my lane. That's what
Yep.
looked like the money maker. And then you're like you were saying, what impact am I actually doing? Am I making the impact I want to?
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard, right? As this type of entrepreneur where you have this personal mission to make an impact, but you also want to make money doing it. Like, let's be honest. The whole thing needs to align and it can be really frustrating. So I think this is something I also kind of want to tell anyone who's listening to this around entrepreneurship. If they're thinking about going into it, maybe are just getting started, they're starting to get frustrated because let's face it, you're going to have those moments where you second guess yourself, where you maybe tell yourself, I'm not made for this. This isn't working. What advice would you give someone when you're at that point? Because it feels like you had a moment where you really got to sit with where you were at and lean into some of your strengths and also not put all your eggs in one basket. Because we talked about this before I pushed the record button. We kind of talked about how we don't always have to just do one thing, right? Like
Yeah.
she was in the video strategy side of her business before she leaned into this new side. And it's not like she's completely abandoned what she's doing, but it's also not what she's heavily focused on right now. So talk about how those things can kind of coexist. If someone's like, well, I kind of do multiple things and I'm trying to figure out where my sweet spot is.
I think the experimentation, is also a thing. Give yourself permission to experiment. And, as we're talking about, money and entrepreneurship, you just like, one thing that frustrates me, and I think more conversation, more nuanced conversation are coming up, is it often feels like either you stay in corporate until you replace, your income within your business. I'm just like, I don't want to do 80 hours a week. I mean, and I'm good enough about working myself to death. I don't need to encourage that. Or you have the whole thing, you take the plunge and you never look back to corporate or any traditional, employment. And I'm just like, can we have multiples? Like, I know for my case, it's at this point, how I landed into entrepreneurship was that I had left a highly toxic corporate job. And I was just like, I can as well just go the entrepreneur road because it had kind of been nagging at me, be like, hey, what about us for, for a hot minute? But at this point in my business, it's like also, I am currently applying for part-time and potentially even full-time remote jobs. But my end goal is my business, especially, at least for the time being, that really spiritual side of my business. And I don't consider, considering having a part-time or even full-time corporate job again, or, some freelance gigs as a failure. For me, it's really also, how you approach it. What does it mean for you? Like the day I realized, hey, it's not making me a bad entrepreneur to just want to build some cash flow. So I can actually go after my mission, make the impact I want without having to worry about, is it making enough dollars yet? Yeah, down the line, I hope it completely replaces. And I have faith that it can happen. But entrepreneurship is really an overnight success. Not that overnight success really exists anywhere. But so for me, that was really changing my approach, because instead of being like, oh, I need a corporate job or whatever, and then having the long game of I need to climb up the ladder or anything, now it's just like, it's cash flow, I can stay there however long I want, and it's not like I'm not looking for a place where I can have, climb up the ladder or get promotion or anything. It's just like, we have a saying in French, which is like, can you put butter in the spinach?
Okay, explain this.
Money.
Explain this.
This is basically like, like we would say, put food on the table, because but we just say putting butter in the spinach. It's just that it came back to me. So yeah, it's just like, can it bring you some cash? It's really like, can it help you with your cash flow? And that's really how I view it. And that was, again, very liberating, because I'm like, my goal, my focus, what I'm excited about, I can lean into that, because I'm also finding other ways, temporary ways to build cash flow.
Well, and that's the thing is I always tell women too that I talk to that are considering entrepreneurship that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing game. And for a lot of us, we're not even really comfortable doing that, taking that leap. We don't know that we're going to be able to cover our past income. And then when we don't do it, we often feel like failures, kind of to your point. So we get a little bit deflated or feel like, oh, this isn't working. And also to your point, most of these businesses you see people running were not overnight successes. They took time, they took effort. And then I feel like there's this whole other crop of entrepreneurs coming up right now that are trying to figure out a way to build a business that's sustainable. And I mean that more from an energy perspective. And you can probably speak to this too as a spiritual entrepreneur, because we've been spoon-fed hustle culture for how long now? You have to grind so hard. It's the only way to succeed in entrepreneurship. And I mean, we've witnessed that with plenty of people. Like, I am going to make this successful. I am going to work myself to point of burnout. Like, and I just see the unsustainability of that. And I see how they're not happy. And then my mind goes, there has to be another way, right? There has to be a more aligned way where you don't feel like you're kind of back to that corporate grind in your own business. And then for me, I think about, well, I love my business if I'm grinding at it every day. We kind of leave corporate. We kind of leave corporate to get out of the grind a lot of the time or feel more aligned and to do the things we really enjoy doing. But when they start to feel like a job in a bad way, then I think we even start to resent our own business. Like, this isn't what I wanted my life to look like. So I'd be curious on your perspective of trying to find that sweet spot in entrepreneurship of supporting like the business side of you and the personal side, and finding that perfect alignment of what people often call work-life balance. But I hate that term because I feel like balance is not a thing in work and life.
No, it's not. Especially balance, it's kind of like you have to keep that in that perfect alignment. Life is messy. We all do the best we can, and we can take, aligned action and, and reassess and everything what we want to do. But like this balance, I'm just like, yeah, I have a decent sense of balance if I'm on one foot, but that's about the extent of it. So you don't want me to start looking at the freaking scales. But yeah, no, I do feel bad. I mean, what you're describing, the resentment, the burnout and everything, that was me in January. That was me even going in, early February, because I was just pushing so hard on everything. And that was like, I don't want to go back to have 30 meetings a week. That was that thing called corporate for that. Except that now, it was without even the paycheck. So it's kind of like, why am I doing that to myself? And I love, I love my work, and there will always that I'm doing, especially now. But, and it's one thing to have heavy weeks. Like this week was launch week. It was bad shit. I'm going to be the first to admit it. It was bad shit. But it was also fulfilling because I was just able, as of this week was kind of like my first time, like 95% just focusing on the tarot intuitive side of my business. And it was tiring, but it was really fulfilling. And I'm like, okay, that was launch week. That was and I'm in the pits of transition. So, it was kind of like, let's put everything the same week.
Yeah.
But even now, after a crazy week, I'm just like, I'm happy. It's kind of like, I feel like I'm in better alignment. And it's also like this transition was the opportunity of, what do you want your schedule to look like? Yeah. Do you want your Google Calendar to continue looking like a pride flag every single week? Maybe not. Probably not.
Yeah.
There.
And I think you're bringing up a really good point, and something for anyone listening to remember as you build a business. If you're trying to build something that is going to be sustainable long-term, that feels good and aligned for you, is you're going to have to establish boundaries in your own business. Because we often get in the habit, especially right out the gate, when we're like, I'm going to build this business, it's going to be an overnight success, or I like want to get it profitable. Like, we're going to do all the things. We're going to overcommit. We're going to be working well into the wee hours of the evening trying to do things, especially if we're still trying to work a corporate job too. It's like you are burning the candle at both ends. So, and I just had this realization in session with Natasha on Monday, where I was like, I'm doing too many things and I won't be able to sustain this. Or I'm not able to focus on certain parts of my business because I'm doing too much of this. Even though this is really important for my business, I need to strike a balance. And I think every entrepreneur, especially early on, like the earlier on, the better to me, start figuring out like what is absolutely necessary for you to do in your business in that moment and protecting some of your time to doing creative sides of your business, like where you really feel like you can tap into what needs to come next or what maybe you need to explore more in your business. So talk to me a little bit about how you approach that. The balance between like there's always things to do. We always have a to-do list of things to do in our business, but then taking the time to kind of just sit and be a little bit more reflective and creative on where you need to go, how you stay in alignment really.
Yeah, that was one of the things, when I realized that something had to give, because I had like roughly, my plans, because I usually work quarterly of like the launch I'm in this week it was for the tarot side of my business from the get-go. I didn't realize how, potent and, meaningful it was going to be. But then I suddenly was just like, oh shit, I'm supposed to have my first full-on mini course that I need to finish and do a 4 weeks launch in March for the video side of my business. And I had started that work last year, but I was just like, does it even matter? Do I want to do that? Does it fire me up? Fuck no. That was really like, that was one of the way, in finding these boundaries. And on the other end, also like, for example, this week, I say it was a long week, but in the middle of that, I probably spent 4 hours just having like really deep conversation with a friend of mine, really, she was holding space, and everything. And just kind of like, so it's a bit of verbal diarrhea. And she's like, okay, that needs to come out. Okay. And, kind of, I think that also ties of don't think you need to assess everything on your own, because as entrepreneurs and, and as women, it's kind of like I'm going to do it all by myself, and the whole solopreneur thing and all. I'm like, okay, you still need community.
Amen. It's why I do what I do. It's like we need spaces where we can talk about what's going on in our business, what's going on in our lives. And often it's just, to your point, holding space for one another, maybe being a sounding board for someone. Because I know as an entrepreneur, you probably know this too, we're very good at getting in our own heads and getting stuck or overthinking things, second guessing things. It's often hearing ourselves talk to someone else that we start to have those aha moments. Like exactly what I was telling you about working with Natasha and doing a tarot reading was like, I needed to hear myself say the things so I could then take the actions and be like, yeah, these messages keep showing up in my life. Am I ready to listen to them now? So yeah, it's like we need each other to be conduits almost to that inner wisdom. So I think this is a really good transition into the specific work you're doing now, because I hope everyone's curious now that, they've been listening to you for about the last 20, 25 minutes. What is it that you're helping people do now that you've shifted to this tarot side of your business? Because some people are probably familiar with tarot, but may not know like really what it's all about. Talk to us about how you're leveraging tarot for people in these intuitive readings.
So I think it's starting more on the business coaching side of things. And then now I'm opening up to more life, especially since originally I even had, many people being entrepreneur. And like we were saying, entrepreneurship, it's kind of, every aspect of our lives. And really, usually people come to me, there are two options. Either they have, an open-ended question about what that they need guidance on, or if people are just like, I don't have a specific question, the go-to is like, okay, what do you need to hear now? And then the cards, I mean, the tarot, are like several centuries old, symbolic card system and map of consciousness. And I also do use oracle card, which are more like on specific theme. I like blending multiple types of card together, because usually I love seeing the conversation, the stories, the inner wisdom. And then I'm sharing what I see, based on 20 plus years of experience, my own experience in storytelling or story weaving, as I say it, and my own intuition, and being like, okay, this is what is coming up. And I love having actual conversation. I'm like, I'm not here to just talk at you. I'm going, to get started with what I see, but Then if you're like, hang on a minute, or I had clients be like, oh, hang on, I think I have context for that. What do you think? And there's sure something extra, or do you need clarity on something? And we can pull more cards. Or sometimes even, while you were talking, I had, the nudge to just pull a few more cards. And that's something I'm starting doing with my clients as well. I'm just like, there's probably something to explore there. And it's really like, facilitating that inner dialogue. It's like getting that other perspective. And, going back to the giving yourself permission, sometimes, if you're like, oh, I saw it in the cards, so maybe I'm giving myself permission, to talk more about it, or the, oh shit, this is coming up again.
Like I said, I'm like, I couldn't tell you how many times the same message was trying to come through in different ways, where I'm like, yeah, I know I need to do something here. There's some alignment that needs to be found. But sometimes we have to keep getting hit with the same message, to your point. It doesn't always land. And I'm someone who's always fascinated in modalities that help people know themselves better or trust themselves more or lean into their intuition. So, I've explored tarot with Natasha. I've explored human design with some of my other friends who are experts in human design, and just trying to understand myself better and kind of how I operate in the world. So talk to us a little bit about how tarot works in that way. Like, what's happening when you pull cards?
So when I pull card is very rare. I pull a single card now. It's
multiple cards.
Yeah, I like, if I'm going to pull multiple cards, I typically like laying them out, whether it's 3 cards or more cards, like, in client readings, and then just let it sink in for a moment and just see what's coming up. It's really also, giving myself permission and to just tap into that. And the self-trust, I've been doing that for a while. I know how I can help people. And, obviously the tarot, very specific, definition or mainstream, interpretation that obviously I learned over the years. But it's also like, I'm at a point where I also trust myself to see what I need to see and what I need to tell, my clients. And it could be simple. Sometimes it's going to be color, or sometimes it's just, sometimes it's because if I know my clients well before that, sometimes I remember and I say, oh, that brings back up whatever conversation we had, or something I saw in one of your posts. But even if people have barely had a conversation with them, there's always going to be something that comes up. And that's, both also the storyteller in me, which is like, oh, what stories are unfolding there? Because that's really, really that too. And I think stories help us connect with ourselves and, with others. And so I would say it's a very intuitive process for me, but it's also like wanting to initiate the conversation and me starting to share what I see. And I may ask, my clients some questions of like, hey, is there XYZ that may be going on in your life because of the theme I see? And I like looking kind of at the general, how the cards are starting to talk to each other and if certain themes really crop back up. And then I like digging into each of the cards, because when we dig, it's kind of like, oh, there was that other layer I didn't see. And to your point about messages repeating themselves, I've been yelled at by my own cards for years. I have some decks I will not bring to a client reading because I'm all, I think we all need tough love in a certain way, but I also want the space I create for my clients to be safe and brave space. We may talk about really hard things, but I also really want it to be landing kindly. So this is why I'm just like, even if some hard stuff is going to come up, I also always try to, bring a softer landing. Because I'm just not here to smack you. I mean, some of my decks, they do that really fine with me, but I'm like, you're not going to start yelling at my clients.
Yeah. It's fun when you pull out a deck that just gives everyone a cosmic bitch slap, to my friend Jennifer's book title. Yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating to me because it was so spot on to where I was at that point in my journey. And I feel like it's one of those things where it's like some people may be skeptical. Do you find that you do encounter some people that are like, how accurate could this really be?
Yeah.
Right? You're pulling these cards randomly, but is there some bigger force in play? And I think it takes a level of curiosity,
Mhm.
right? Like, how do people need to approach these types of sessions?
Uh, First of all, I think there's still a lot of I don't want to say stigma, but even misunderstanding and cliche, because
Mhm.
most of the time, if you let's talk about popular culture, like if you're going to bring tarot in popular culture, it's a tarot reader, really fortune teller, flamboyant kind, is going to pull the death card, and the character's love interest is going to die on the spot, and because we've not freed enough women lately to give men a reason to grow and all, but that's a whole over discussion. Let me hop off my soapbox. And it's also like, oh, it's fortune telling or anything, or you're going to tell me my future. And I'm just like,
No.
no, it's for me. This is also why I literally say I'm not a fortune teller. I will not answer yes or no question. And if you're asking about, any of your relationship, professional or personal with somebody else, I will only look at your role in it. I am not going to talk about whatever that other person may be doing. And that's also why I'm generally like, I will not read about your love life, because that's a wall over can of worm I have no interest in dealing with. I believe in people's agency. So really I'm here to share, whatever comes up. And yes, there's the, well, how accurate can it be or anything? I'm just like, now there's it's the same with astrology to a degree, like, oh, your sun sign horoscope, it's blah, 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 it's never on point or whatever. Yeah, because if you look at your birth chart, there's so much more there. So it's really how you approach it, or, human design can really, I look at those are self-discovery modalities, just like, it's not different. And I know some people would scream at that than doing, a Gallup strength test. It's still self-discovery, just that it looks way more woo-woo from the outside to some people.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like certain modalities speak more to certain people, and it definitely seems like those that are a little bit more spiritually inclined find their way into some of these like modalities like tarot and human design, and they're looking outside the box of like traditional self knowledge. Like, what do I know? Strength Finder's great. I've done it. I think it's really hard to work with the information you have there, because I feel like that's one of those things where you're like, okay, this is great. This feels accurate, but like, what does this mean? Or how do I use this information? Where tarot and human design feel like they at least give you a jumping off point to start working on something where you're like, this feels accurate and I feel inclined to take steps in a certain direction. Um, I'm curious though, since you probably have a lot of entrepreneurs come your way, maybe a lot of women, if there's certain themes you see come up frequently.
First of all, I just want to go back to what you were saying about, the jumping point, because for me, that's really the way I do think that's extremely important, of giving people something, they can implement or think about, which is also why, when I send a recap, there's also like customized, personalized journaling prompts, how other people are going to use that, because I'm like, this is, that guidance for me, it's really that starting point, and then how can it help you, move forward so you can continue to do the work. So I love that you bring that up. And theme that often happen, the self-trust. I think the self-trust is really something that comes up a lot, no matter the situation. There's really like, and I think like it kind of makes sense, because when you're in entrepreneurship or you're women or everything, there's so much in society and conditioning that is kind of like the, are you sure? What on earth are you thinking? And can you just go back into the right lane that was specifically designed for you? By assholes.
Yeah. Everything was designed to basically put us in a box, I feel like.
Yeah, I joke that I cannot think like there is a box because my cats have stolen all of the boxes.
There is no box.
Yep.
And I think that's a thing we as more spiritually inclined women start to realize, maybe it comes through experience, age, whatever, we can't be put in a box. And we probably spent a lot of our lives trying to fit in a certain box. So tarot is a really good tool to be like, oh, am I like trying to put myself in a box or trying to do things that are not aligned with even how I want to show up in the world or what I need to be in alignment. So I love it for that. Anything that kind of points you in a more aligned direction. What else do you want to tell people about the value of tarot, trusting your intuition, the things that you help women, maybe men? I don't know, you work with men too?
I've helped men on the video side of things. At this point, I've only worked with women for the tarot side. And something that comes up in the tarot, I think also is that I know some people, maybe part of who may be also part of the LGBTQIA plus community, maybe like, or, be like, yeah, well, the tarot is very binary because of its history. And, the older deck also very white on top of that. So it's kind of like, how can we negotiate with, this, this history? And I think that the way I do approach it is more talking, in terms of archetypes or, of energy. I'm still working with masculine and feminine, but I don't see that, as a harsh binary, because for me, I think everybody, has these kind of energies. So, and also like one thing is that many decks now also are more inclusive in their imagery and thinking, thinking to be more inclusive, like, and I think that's really also something to investigate. It'd be like, okay, and something I try to be mindful of with my clients and the decks I'm going to bring forward, even the decks I do have. And which is also why I think Oracle decks, which, for those who may not be familiar, well, every tarot deck is basically going to have the same cards, but different, imagery. It's still the same system. Well, every Oracle deck, it's its own system. So you can have decks, about women or about forest or about cats or about dragons. There's really like, there's probably, if you want something, there's probably an Oracle deck about it now, or somebody's thinking about making one. So because it's not something I've seen come up a lot, but it's something that I also really was mindful of. And I think that's really interesting to be like, how do you approach it?
I love this. I'm going to do something right now and put you on the spot because I kind of want people listening to experience what we've been talking about. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to pull a card or two as a general message to anyone listening to this. She's always got decks near her. This is why I'm asking. And she's going to know which one to pull from or which ones to pull from. Tell us what you're seeing, like as a general message to anyone listening who's vibing with what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, I was prepared. I just had this intuition that it could come up. So I was just like, okay, just to be sure, what are we going? So just so people know, maybe listening to us, I am going to pull like one tarot card from the Cozy Witch Tarot deck, which is the most recent deck I got, which is by Amanda Lovelace and is really inclusive. There are like women and femme presenting folks of different ethnicity, different ages, different abilities, different shapes. And I absolutely love this deck. I'm just like, if you're looking for an inclusive deck, that might really be a good one. Also, sorry in advance if me, shuffling the cards mean that my mic is going to go haywire. So
no, it's okay. And I will say this, because I know you have a resource, right? For those who are curious about getting their own decks. It's definitely something I can link to. If you want to provide some guidance, because some people don't know where to start with any of this. If you're curious about getting your own deck and pulling cards and all of that, but
yes, I do. I also do have a page on my website where I share like all my decks, and I also share like my all-time favorite tarot book, because it can be exhausting or overwhelming to be like, I just want this this tarot card. I'm just going to pull both cards and then talk about it. But yeah, just this first card, I'm just like, yeah, that's probably something all of us can have.
Of course. And you're feel free to show it on video for those that are going to watch this on YouTube.
I will. I'm just okay, and I'm pulling one oracle card from the Witchcraft Oracle by Stacy DeMarco, which is really cute because the author, I think, also wants, like, if you want to use cards, you know, with kids or whatever, all of the characters, the human characters, are children, but it's also like, you know, this kind of multiple layers, like, you know, kid movies or something, or kid books, where it can be at the level of the kids, and as an adult you're just like, good one.
How I feel when I watch a lot of kids movies.
So yeah, I will show the card once I figure. But yeah, those
Just
are
gotta
two of
shuffle
my
those
favorite.
decks.
Mm-hmm.
Talks to me about how some decks are harder to shuffle than others.
Yeah, that's also why I kind of made it easy for me without, you know, bringing on my decks that are like, one card is almost twice the size of my hand. I'm like, why did I do that to myself? And oh, I love that. Oh, both these cards. The one I got from the Witchcraft Oracle is the first time I am pulling it. Oh, I love it.
Whoa.
Okay, so from the Witchcraft deck, I pulled the Nine of Swords. Which, for those of us who may be listening to us, it does look like a woman presenting person lying down in their bed, which is interesting because there have a lot of blue beddings. The clock on their side says 3 a.m. and above them there's kind of like a wall decoration with 9 daggers of swords. And what the author added to that on the card itself was like, we all get a bit carried away with our worries sometimes. Yeah, the Nine of Swords is typically really, it's typically the Nine of Swords. Many of us are just like, oh shit, because the Nine of Swords really speak about, you know, all the worries and the anxiety that we can have about some things or all the things. And also the swords is typically associated a lot with the intellect or the air element, and you know, how we can get wrapped up in our minds, and the whole, you know, 3 a.m. here, you know, it's when you're really like the vibe of, oh, either you just woke up or you cannot sleep because you're like rattling all the things in your head. And this is really an invitation to be more grounded, you know, and really take that breath, you know, really allow yourself to not just take the pose, but also lean into the emotions, because if you can drop back down into the body, you are likely able to just not stay stuck in your mind. So maybe go for that walk, or if it's the middle of the night, and I'm like that, I literally may just be going to go get another glass of water, or just if I cannot sleep, I'm just, usually I can go back to sleep, but if I really cannot, it's like, okay, I need to like read a book or something, just, you know, get out of like the wall rattling thing. And what I find super interesting in it is that, like I was mentioning, it is like the bedding is blue, and the blue is typically associated with the throat chakra, which is really like the self-expression, the, am I sharing my needs? Am I speaking my own truth? And I love this little detail because the blue, as far as I remember, is really associated strongly with that one. So I love the take on it. I would love to know if the author did that for this reason, but this is really what's coming up. It's, if you're so worried, it's like, are you worried about what others are going to think about you if you speak your truth? That's, I feel slightly attacked, but I feel less attacked than I would have been a week ago.
Yeah. I was like, I can only imagine there's some women listening that will resonate with. There's some truth you're not speaking. Because I feel like as women, that's a pretty common theme, where we're people pleasers and trying to protect other people's feelings in the process, but damaging ourselves. So I like this reminder a lot. Yeah, because it's also making me think about a message I heard earlier this week. I'm like, it's always like this divine timing. Like things keep showing up theme wise, where I can't even remember who said this, but I think it's someone I'm friends with on LinkedIn. It was some video about, have we worried enough? And asking yourself this question. Have I worried enough?
That's pure Nine of Swords energy.
And it's not a question we often ask ourselves. We just worry about all the things, but it's like, at a point, can you ask yourself, have you worried enough about whatever it is you're worried about? And maybe if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about entrepreneurship, maybe it's tied to that. Are you worried about something in your business, or that you're gonna fail? That's the automatic thing I think we go to.
Yeah.
When we start, what if I fail? Or you start worrying about it, like you're getting like cart way before the horse.
Yes. Yes, yes. And this is, and like this aspect of like truth and self-expression for me was really one of the big things, you know, when I just had the first seeds planted, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go jump off the woo-woo deep end, even though I think, you know, I say woo-woo with much love, because I know, you know, some people, you know, call it in a
Yeah.
bad way. But for me, it's also, you know, part of the reclaiming, you know, and how, including, you know, as women and other groups of individuals, it's like the reclaiming of the shit language, and be like, okay, you want to use that? Well, I'm going to flip the script in what that means. And so, yeah, for me, that was really stepping into my truth and being like, you know what? It might not be, none of us, and I think that's another really important thing, is like none of us is for everybody. And that's good. That's fine. But it also ties easily into this worry, and do I want to express myself? I mean, I'm happy that I don't know how many billions people don't all want to work with me. I wouldn't have the time anyway, you know, or even if they don't all like me, I don't care. I barely sometimes have time to just, you know, talk with the people I love. So we good.
Yeah. It's like being honest with yourself about what you actually want and need in your business too. Because just because you're seeing other people do all the things or burn the candle at both ends, or you feel like that's the only way, it's not usually. For me, I had to get really clear on what I wanted to create as well, what felt aligned for me. So that's an invitation to everyone who's listening. Listen to your own wants and needs, says the Nine of Swords.
Yes, yes, that's the Nine of Swords. And the other card, the Oracle card I got, and I'm going to show it in a second, is create a spiral. And the message on it is I am flowing with the seasons.
Ooh, this is perfect tie into what I'm going to ask you to share next.
And for those who are listening to us, on that card, there is like a lot of stone and shells and rocks of different shapes inside, big ones on the outside, and becoming kind of closer and closer and closer until at the center. So they form a spiral, and at the center there is a big triangular bluish stone that is bigger again. And for me, what I seen, that I will get to the seasons right after, but just the creating a spiral, it's like going deep. What do you want? Who are you? What do you want to create? You know, it kind of goes like, it's kind of like the follow-up to the Nine of Swords. You know, you recognize, you honor everything that comes up with the Nine of Swords, and then it's like, how can I go deeper? You know, because the deeper we first go, then the better we can, you know, express things outwardly. So it's, the spiral is not, you, once you go at, you know, at the bottom of it, you can still spiral back up and see, okay, how am I going to expand? And I love that the big stone at the center, first of all, is blue again. So that ties into self-expression. There is a hint of green and a hint of purple. So the green is usually associated with the heart chakra. So it's really like, you know, don't just operate from others' expectation of whatever. What do your heart wants? What, you know, does bring you joy? How do you feel like you're making a difference in your relationships, in how you serve? And the bit of purple, that purple, it feels more like a crown chakra than a third eye one in its color, but it's, I'm going to go with both when it's really like, how are you relating to the universe? You know, whatever your beliefs are. Maybe you just want to look at it as, you know, just your immediate community, or, you know, look at it from a more spiritual way. And also both can go together. It's not saying it has to be the one way you relate to the universe. There's a lot of things, a lot of us in the universe. So
Yes.
it's not just one way to look at it. And going with your intuition, I think. And I like that since it has three sides, it's in kind of a triangle for me. That's also like, when you go down that spiral, you can integrate mind, body, and soul.
I love that.
And the little bit of the season, I am flowing with the seasons. It's, we're getting into springs, or, you know, in the northern hemisphere, and towards fall in the southern hemisphere. It's like the seasons are always going to flow. And I think that I'm going to say, I don't have a 5-year plan in my business. I don't care about having it. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. I don't even have, you know, I'm not into New Year's resolution. I don't have XYZ goal for the year. I've been more and more operating on like, what do I want this season, which usually is like this quarter, you know, if you want to be like more market-ish thing. And it gives me room to breathe and not be like, I need to do all the things, and not stare at the to-do list of doom from the get-go. And also helped me make this pivot, because if I was already like, hang on, I have the to-do list for the whole year, and it's really like I'm screwing shit up, or that's what I would have felt, like there's liberation into thinking of season, and season not just on the calendar, but what is this season for you? I had my higher education season. I had my corporate season. I had my first entrepreneur season, with all the content and video focus. And I'm entering my tarot season, my intuitive guidance season. I don't know how long this season is going to be, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to like the calendar seasons, this is something I've realized. I realized this winter was, if you tune into the calendar seasons truly, and you can talk to people to help you do this. Natasha is probably a good resource, one, and I know plenty of others too, where this whole New Year's resolution thing that we do as a culture actually does not play very well into that season of winter. It's actually close to the opposite for me. It's like, that's why we feel this pull to rest during the winter, right?
Yes. I mean, this is why much of nature hibernates, or goes dormant. And here we're going to do all the thing, crush all the goals. And it's like, you should be taking a damn nap.
There you go. Permission to take a nap in January when you're supposed to be hustling your ass off, right? Says society. This is when you get your butt into gear about everything. And it's like,
and some more if you can.
yeah. I was like, it just, for those of us that are tuned in more intuitively and with the seasons and spiritually, like January is just not a good month for the hustle. It's not, but to each their own, right?
Oh yeah. If it's your thing, go for it. It's just like, do not have to make it like a standard. If that works for you, I am 100% behind you. I'm just like, go for it. But if it's not your thing, honor that as well, because it's going to serve you and then whoever you're serving in turn.
This is back to that permission, giving yourself permission. If you're feeling like January is not the time you feel the most creative, if you feel compelled to take a nap or take more rest than you normally would, just honor yourself. You know better than anyone, and you're under no pressure to do or be anything other than what you want to be. So before we wrap it up, because we're getting close on time, as we're talking about seasons, Natasha just launched her first digital product all around this topic. So tell us a little bit about what it is, where people can find you, and this product you just launched.
Oh, sure thing. Yeah, no, I was also like, I knew where you were going with that. I was like, oh, flowing with the season. I was like, I cannot, you cannannot make that up.
Could not tee it up better.
This card. I had never pulled that card from that deck as well. It was kind of like, okay.
It's all aligned.
And I'm here for it. So when I was referring to a launch during this week is I launched my very first digital product, which is called Intention for the Season. Just for a little backstory is that, because we're talking about alignment and giving ourselves permissions, I just want to give the little story of how this came to be before diving into it. So a friend of mine was, first of all, said, oh, would you be interested in hosting an intuitive workshop for me and some of my friends? Okay. So I did with that, but I didn't want to just offer, group and individual tarot readings. I also really I led people into meditation, first time ever. That was scary. That was really great, but I was kind of like, what did I put myself into? And then at the end of it, because, it was during December, and instead of, to counter that whole hustle, New Year's resolution, I put together this kind of flow of, hey, here are some intentions and energy you can choose from that you want to embody at the beginning of the year, in the winter. And then for each of them, I had offered several modalities, that were really curated for it and personalized. And then a friend of mine, when I told her about that, was like, you should make that available to everybody. And she had not even gone through that, but she was like, that sounds amazing. This is so you. So this is how, thanks to also other people input, and trusting in timing and who you're going to be speaking with and interacting. I was like, oh, okay. So really the point of Intentions for the Season, it's a completely self-paced, sometimes I say micro course, but the way I see it is like an intention setting flow that you can choose to do as often as you want. Maybe you want to do it, for your birthday, or, the new year, if it's your thing, or, for the change of calendar season, or if you like working with the moon, maybe you want to do that on a new moon, or, every month, or just if you feel like you need to do it. It's like really open. It's, and it's really here to help you not only, set the intentions, but how can you deep dive into them? Don't just put the word of, that one time on the paper and then, forget about it.
Yeah.
It's really wired, this flow to help you, get grounded with yourself. And then, pick from these available. There are 21. All of them were intuitively chosen. That was also, I think, for me, one of the first steps, before that workshop, when I really lean into that intuitive guidance. Yep. And from for each of them, there are 4 modalities that are attached to each of them in the workbook that you can pick from. So you can have chakra work, tarot cards to deep dive in, crystals to work with, and, just reflection/journaling prompts. So whether you consider yourself, just a beginner, or you're already, seasoned in any of these, you have the option to work with 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these modalities. But it's also like, maybe you want to just work with 1 or 2 on one season, then the next time you will go through that, you're just like, oh, I want to explore another modality. Or, maybe you're doing it for the year and you're just like, I'm really excited. I am going to break it down maybe between season. I'm going to keep the same intention, but I'm not going to use the same modality during that time. And it's overall fairly beginner friendly, if you're just like, I've never done tarot, or I don't know idea how to use crystal in the first place. There are like suggestions in it, that are beginner friendly of how you can use any of these modalities, in your day-to-day life. And I'm also providing some bonuses, including how, basics to how to set up your altar, or how to cleanse your crystals, and also trusted books, if you want to get started, and also trusted decks that I consider beginner friendly, and also trusted crystal shops that I know source ethically, because that's also often a concern about, I want crystal, but I also want to make sure, the way they were sources, ethical. So I kind of including all of that in the bonuses as well.
Love it. Love it. So where can people find you and this product?
So people I'm currently redoing my website because the product in itself is on PayHip, and I'm happy to provide the direct link to it to go with the recording.
It will be in the show notes.
Perfect. And it's going to be on my website as well, because I was literally right before this recording, I was updating my website, and people can also find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube.
What is your handle?
So you can find me under my name, Natacha Guyot, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm going to be switching my handle, so it's a little TBD, because somebody had my name and it's an empty account, and I was very mad about that. But I'm kind of switching because my current handle is attached to my video work, so I'm kind of like figuring out how I'm changing my handle. So I will see what is available.
Well, when she has it, it will be in the show notes. You can find her there. Also, I imagine if anyone's interested in a reading, which you gave a taste of, on your website.
Yes, the website works, and also the link is directly on my Instagram. It's on YouTube. I mean, I try to really keep all my links super available, wherever people find me. So it's not a scavenger hunt.
Perfect. Well, it's been so much fun having this conversation. Hopefully, Natasha will be back in the future to share more as her business evolves, this fun pivot she's gone into. Thanks, everyone, for listening. My goal is to bring these types of conversations every week, where we're kind of deep diving into a transition that was powerful for our guest and usually relatable to anyone listening. For those of you listening that are entrepreneurs thinking about entrepreneurship, I hope you got the value out of this conversation. It's been so much fun to chat about all the things, Natasha. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and to everybody listening. It was a great conversation.
Awesome conversation. And we'll see you all again next week.